Welcome to the Women Inspired podcast, brought to you by Modern Well, a beautiful woman-centered collaborative workspace in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm your host, April Seifert, psychologist, entrepreneur, and self-proclaimed life experience junkie. Each week, I will introduce you to a different woman who is succeeding and inspiring others in one way or another. We'll dive into her story, her successes, failures, and the lessons she has learned along the way, all with the goal of inspiring you to listen to that inner voice who keeps reminding you that there is something you want to take action on. You are so much more capable and powerful than you give yourself credit for. Inside of you is a woman on fire. Let's let her out and see what happens. Here we go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Women Inspired podcast. My name is April Seifert and I am your host. And this week is an extremely powerful and extremely timely episode. We are talking about something that absolutely affects every single one of us on a daily basis.
When I talk about parenthood as a lens for politics, those eyes are the eyes that I want people to see the world through. Because I think it cuts through a lot of the animosity and the venom and the bipartisanship and this sort of being at odds and fighting for your team, you know, at the cost of your humanity.
That incredible woman is Sara Berliner, and she is the founder of the website votelikeamother.org. Her goal is to get people to vote with the lens of parenthood. And she mentioned that in that clip that I just shared. She says on her website that when you bring the concepts of care and respect into the voting booth, when your purpose is to build rather than to tear down, you're voting like a mother. Given that in a week or two, depending upon when this episode drops, it'll be another election. We'll be at the midterm elections on November 6th. This episode is so timely as we all think about the values that we have and the topics and the issues that are important to us. And primarily, I urge you all to think about those topics and those issues from the lens of respect and kindness and compassion. And that is what Sara talks about as voting like a mother. I'm so excited for you all to meet her and for you all to hear about this amazing project that she's doing. Sara, I am so excited that you're joining us for this episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really thrilled.
So, you are one of the people who I have really done a lot of research on online, and I have gotten more and more excited about our conversation as time has gone on and as I've seen more about what you're doing. So this is going to be amazing. Before we dig into all of that, can you just help us get to know you a little bit and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
For sure. I grew up in Chicago, and I am now living in New York. I have 2 kids. Happily married to the love of my life, and I've worked in children's media for over 15 years with a particular focus on digital media and consumer products, making toys and making books. And I have always been a little bit of an activist, mainly on a personal and community level, but had an idea for a way to reach a bigger audience and try to improve the world just this past spring. And that's what I'm excited to talk to you about.
Amazing. So let's just launch right into that, because I am so excited to talk to you about this. I don't want to beat around the bush at all. I want to jump into all of the good stuff. So you run this amazing website called votelikeamother.org. Tell us a little bit about what you do on your website and what the sort of guiding force behind it is.
Sure. Well, probably the easiest way to understand where it comes from is to tell you how I had the idea.
Perfect.
As I mentioned, I've always been a bit of an activist and helped, fundraise for causes and gone to marches and, for things that I believe in. I was very inspired by the Parkland students, the survivors, who put together the March for Our Lives at the end of March. And I wanted to have a sign that, to me, got to the heart of the issue. And the heart of the issue is voting, that if we don't like the policies enacted by the people that we've elected to represent us, it's on us to elect different people. And as a mom, the issue of gun violence, it hits close to home. And there are some communities that have been dealing with it forever and on a daily basis. And there's some communities for whom it's new and it's something that happens all at once. And these young people getting activated was very, very inspiring to me. So I thought, okay, I'm going to honor them with a sign that helps to convey their message. And I wrote just me and my Sharpie with a piece of cardboard, vote like a mother. And I thought, hey, that's kind of good. I kind of feel like I came up with something kind of good, but, I thought, but probably I'm the 1,000th person to think of that. So we go into the city and we're going up to the march, and people on the train are kind of looking at my sign and taking surreptitious pictures. And I'm like, okay, that hasn't happened to me at a rally or march before.
Like, my sign is awesome. Look what I did.
Yeah. So we get up to the march, and we're walking down the street, and literally people are coming out of cafes. Like, they see me walk by, they're looking out the window, and they come out to take a picture. And I'm thinking, this has definitely never happened before. And I realized it was cross-generational. It was people of all genders. It was people of all different walks of life. And I thought, I actually think the lightning struck. I think that this is resonating in a way that I've never seen before. And I thought, I have a responsibility. This is me being called. This is me with the heartache of the state of the country and our political discourse, and me feeling like kind of like there wasn't enough I could do. Here's my answer. It's just been handed to me. And this vision for a movement just came to me. And I thought, all right, well, I've tested the message. This is my focus group. They didn't know they were part of it, and I didn't mean for them to be, but here they are. And I want this on a shirt. And I bet all these people do too. And that's how we're going to get this message out there. And so I right away got on my phone and I grabbed the URL and I grabbed the social media handles. I couldn't get the data to work, and I'm calling my mom. I'm like, Mom, can you get on Twitter and get @vote like a mother? And I literally set it up to be able to move forward as quickly as possible, because I thought, there's not a lot of time. We've got to do this. So what I did was create a line of Vote Like a Mother products with 100% of profits going to mom-led nonprofits. And I am using the gear as a way to spread this idea. And it's been just an incredible journey to feel like, I always would look at these magazine articles or listen to podcast interviews and think, like they had such a great idea. Like, how did they have this great idea, and manifest it? And to feel like, I felt like, oh my gosh, is this like my Oprah moment? Am I living my best yet?
I love it. I love that you recognized it too. You were like, this is a thing. There is like some kind of giant sunbeam shining down on me right now. This is it. I love it.
Exactly. No, it literally was like that. I thought, this is mine. I'm having one. And here we go. And I thought, I literally wrote on my to-do list, I had all these tasks, and I wrote, I've got to nail this. And I felt like I was just telling myself that, this was the cause. This is the thing I was meant to do. And that this was the thing that all the other things I've done in my life was sort of leading up to without me knowing.
That's an amazing story. It's an amazing background. And God, so organic in terms of how the idea came to you and how everything crystallized. And one thing that I want to call out before we dive even further into the specifics of what you're doing and the message behind it and why it's so important is that something that I talk with my audience about a lot is this notion of just start. Like, just start. I don't care what goal or thing or whatever it is you want to do, just start. Do one thing today. It doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to know 10 steps from now. When you're on the 9th step, the 10th step will illuminate. You don't have to worry about that right now. And I love that you did that. You saw that there was this amazing opportunity to throw this, turn this sign into something so much bigger than that. And you just started. You're like, all right, I got my phone. I can get a URL from here. I can get some social media handles. I can make this happen. I'll figure out what I'm going to do with it later, but I know I need to secure these things. So I'm going to do that first step. And I think that's amazing because so many people don't realize that literally that's all it takes. Just take the first step and then figure the rest of it out.
Exactly. And it's a low commitment to start. If you get down the road and you find out, oh, this isn't tenable, shut it down. Start something else. But the level of investment that it took, maybe it was $20 for the URL, no money at all for the social media handles, and the security to know that if I can really make this real, I now have the sort of tools that I need to at least get started. You're absolutely right. It was just about starting. And then it was really about research. And for me, that's how those steps that you're talking about, those followed on, is I said, okay, well, I know the way to start this is both the social media and the gear, because it's about this very bold visual representation of this idea. How do I start a clothing line? And just staying up. I mean, I was not sleeping. I was just combing through article after article. And, we live in the age of the internet. Sometimes it feels like nothing is possible because of the internet, because it's like there's too many choices and it's sort of paralysis of choice.
Right.
Or like you're operating in this, big black hole of information and you can't make any headway. Well, I found if I did very, very targeted research, I was able to actually find advice incredibly helpful, just getting from one step to the next. Okay, here are your choices. Here's a review, with your choices of ways to start. In particular, was saying to start a t-shirt line. Now, they weren't talking about here's how to start an activist product line with a charitable, donation. I mean, it was not specific to me, but I was able to take what they were talking about and apply it. And it was just the way to see, okay, here is a potential path and here's how other people have done it.
Yeah, I'm reading your About page right now, and it says, when you bring the concepts of care and respect into the voting booth, when your purpose is to build rather than to tear down, you're voting like a mother. That brings tears to my eyes because I've said it often to my husband. When I became a mom, especially, the first time when I had my first child, and I went through that sometimes difficult identity transition of, becoming a mom, I felt like I became everyone's mom. Like, now it's not just about me caring for my child and making sure that my child does okay. But now that I know what that connection to that child is like, I suddenly understand women and the connection they have to their kids and the same motivation and passion they have to make sure their kids thrive. That I can't describe how much that opened my eyes and how much my heart, I feel like the Grinch, my heart grew 10 sizes that day. It kind of did, because I felt like all of a sudden I had this connection to this sisterhood of women who felt the same way about their kids that I feel about mine, and how I just felt like it was my job to make sure not only my kid was okay, but that their kid was okay. Like, we're in this community together to make sure that our kids grow up really well.
Yeah, I connected to two things. One, this idea of there are no other people's children, that doesn't exist. All children are the children of our community, our region, our country, our world, and that we have to apply that same caring that we do extend to our children, to all children. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I think those feelings and that transition into motherhood at least brought for me is a deep well of empathy and the ability to look at people and say, oh, that person, that is someone's child. That might be an adult doing something that I don't agree with, but that is someone's child. They used to be an actual child. They may be an adult child now, but we were all children once, and we were all cared for. We were birthed by mothers, and the majority cared for by mothers of some kind, whether it was your biological or mother or not, that's irrelevant. And that lens, when I talk about parenthood as a lens for politics, those eyes are the eyes that I want people to see the world through. Because I think it cuts through a lot of the animosity and the venom and the bipartisanship and this sort of being at odds and fighting for your team, at the cost of your humanity. And I think if you come to the world, again, whether or not you are a mother or of any kind, regardless, if you're able to see the world as parents see their children, I think that you come to political discourse and to participation in society with empathy. And that's what's missing right now. Now, the other thing I love is bringing a sense of humor to it, because to me, empathy and humor, there's a nice interdependence. Mm-hmm. The ability to laugh at yourself is the ability to see yourself as human and to see yourself as equal to other people. And a lot of what happens in our politics today is people putting themselves on pedestals and saying, I want more power. I want more money. I want to be in charge. I want to be able to rule you. And those people, to me, lack a sense of humor. They lack a self-reflexivity, and they lack empathy.
Well, and lack the ability to think about how our government is supposed to actually run, where, sorry, you actually work for us. Like, we don't work for you. You're not on top. You're our employee. We put you there. We'll take you out. Or at least that's how it's supposed to work. So when I think about, I kind of want to dive into some topics that, or some issues that are particularly relevant. And I want to dive in here because there are some that probably bubble to the surface as being obvious, but depending upon where you're at in your stage of life and how your home works and all of that, some may be more or less relevant. You may have thought more or less about some of them. So can you kind of run me through some of the issues that are particularly close to home for the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. So a major one for me is women's rights, the ability for us to have the right to control our own bodies. That is as fundamental as it gets. And the idea that, anyone except a woman would get to make choices about her own body is anathema to me. And it is really incumbent on our government, as you said, to represent the will of the people. Well, the people who believe that women should have rights over their own bodies, that's the majority, and that's not being represented. So to me, that's a major issue where rights that have been settled law may come up again, and our government, may try to take away rights that are hard-won, long fought for and settled. So that's something that I see there. We need to really gear up, and we need to protect ourselves, and we need to vote as if that's a battle that's ahead. So that's a big one. I have come over the last few years to recognize the cost to our country, to its people, to its well-being of mass incarceration. This is not an issue that affects my family personally, and I feel very grateful for that, but it affects me as a human. the amount of lives that have been inexorably altered, both people who have been incarcerated and their families, the amount of mothers, and this disproportionately affects Black families and families of color, where children are effectively incarcerated themselves as well, or are separated from their mothers and their fathers for years upon years for sometimes no reason, sometimes for reasons that should not. Maybe there was a mistake made, a crime committed, but it's something very minor and that does not deserve this type of punishment. I've come to understand how the government has used mass incarceration as a tool for enrichment themselves and of, political backers, and also as a way to keep people from voting, and to keep people from being full participants in society, and to just create this perpetual system where, you're on this wheel and you can't get off, and it goes from generation to generation. So that is one that I think there are some groups doing incredible work around this, particularly thinking of one in Los Angeles, and, really trying to do work that will lead to change in this country. The Equal Justice Initiative is a really fantastic institution. If this is an issue that resonates with anyone, I really recommend to check out the Equal Justice Initiative website and look for ways to get involved. I think that this is an issue that underlies a lot of other problems in our society. I'll jump just to a third one and talk a little bit about the rights of LGBTQ plus people and the disabled. The way that our current president has mocked disabled people, the way that he has undermined protections for anybody who fits into any kind of descriptor, but certainly in particular has worked to undermine LGBTQ plus individuals. That does to me sort of smack of evil. There are regimes that have existed in history that have singled out people for a difference of whatever kind and, gone down the road of everything from restricting their rights to throwing them in jail to torturing them to killing them. And to me, any kind of language or effort to restrict any people's rights, it starts to head in that direction. And I find that to be very scary and historically a slippery slope. And so that's just something that, I'm acutely aware of. Climate justice. There's so many that I think of, when I think of voting like a mother and think about how, currently who's in charge is really the people. Those people are doing the opposite of what I see as caring for people and caring for the earth. That, I could keep going, but I don't want to derail our conversation.
Yeah. I mean, there's what I think is so fundamental to what you're saying. And I want to connect the dots between what you're saying now and a conversation we had earlier, because I guarantee there's somebody, in their car, I'm in their earbuds right now or whatever, listening to this who there's probably people of all political backgrounds who are listening to this episode. And the thing I want to connect is, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, the notion of empathy that we talked about before, the notion of kindness and respect that we talked about before, if you talk about them in isolation, people, almost everyone, I would say 99% plus of people would say, oh yeah, empathy is a good thing. Yep, respect is a good thing. Kindness, good thing. I want people to keep that in mind in general as you see not just any particular elected official, but all of them, as you see how they act and what they do in their position of power. Because kindness, empathy, and respect, as notions that we all agree are positive things, they shouldn't get thrown out the window when we start to talk about something so fundamental as the governing body of our country. We should expect not that they don't. In some cases, I feel like people think that they don't apply in that case. Rather, they should apply so much more. If you have somebody who has so much power and they're in a position of so much power, the standard that they are held to should be that much higher than your average person. So if we all can agree that empathy, respect, kindness are virtues that are good things that people should have, that we all teach our kids, no, you can't take toys from other people, no, you shouldn't call each other names and make fun of each other, same things that we're telling our kids and the standard that I'm holding my 2.5-year-old to, we should be holding our elected officials to an even higher standard. Those values don't go out the window when we're talking about something like politics because, one side feels like they don't apply or the other. Like, I feel like there's this disconnect that people have between those values and how you think about how our political system should operate.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that certain factions of our society have worked hard to essentially trick people into thinking that those things don't apply. It's been a concerted effort, and it's been, backed by billionaires who have essentially money to create a way of thinking and push that on people. And I think that what you're saying is people need to take a step back and look at the reality of the situation and say, is what they're pushing, does that benefit them? Who does it benefit? Does it benefit them and, the corporations that they own and their families and their friends? Or does it benefit a lot of people? To me, the question always has to be, does this benefit the few or does it benefit the many? And to me, that is at the core of Vote Like a Mother, is this idea of wanting the world that we want for our kids, wanting it for everyone. And that is what people with a lot of money and power are trying to get you not to think. They want you to think about yourself, your self-interest, and the interest of the few, and the interest of the politicians, although they would never tell you that. I think this idea of spending time to dig a little deeper and actually, educate ourselves on issues, what's really happening, is incredibly important.
And something I want to make a connection to a past episode that I did. This is way back in the history of Women Inspired. And this is before I had an editor. And this is when I wasn't quite sure of my audio setup, unfortunately, because the interview was amazing. So just take that as a grain of salt. But I interviewed a woman by the name of Gerda Weissman Klein. She is a Holocaust survivor. She was episode 19 of the podcast. And I bring her episode up now because it's easy in our comfortable, day-to-day, distracted environment to feel like these issues don't really matter that much. Things are fine. Things are okay. This doesn't completely impact me, whatever the other justifications are. I encourage you to listen to that interview with Gerda because that's exactly what people around her and her family were thinking before, frankly, shit hit the fan. And they went from, and she tells this, her story is heartbreaking. So get a box of Kleenex before you listen to that episode and especially before you Google her. She talks about how neighbors of hers went from being friends to flying the Nazi flag and supporting people who were killing Jewish people, who ultimately killed her father, killed her mother, killed her brother. I mean, it was just devastating. And so I bring that up because it's a delicate balance between some of the small changes, or what feel like sometimes small changes we see day to day, and the dominoes starting to fall in the direction of something that's truly catastrophic. And so I just encourage people to listen to her. She's the most wonderful woman. I'm so grateful that I had the chance to talk to her, but listen to her in the context of, again, what if this were my family, and what if we felt like this, and what going on today feels like it's a slippery slope into a direction that could turn into something catastrophic if we all don't start to care a little bit more.
Yeah, right. And what if she had come to the U.S. and been turned away as a refugee?
Right. She
would have.
Actually, her husband, the man who became her husband, was her liberator. He was the one who liberated her. She was at the end of the death march, essentially. And her husband was the American soldier who liberated her and who helped her immigrate to the U.S. And her life would be drastically different. The Holocaust Memorial Museum and countless elementary schools' history education would be drastically different if it wasn't for that woman moving to the United States and becoming an activist to stand up for what it means to participate in democracy and be an active part of our government.
Yeah, that's just unimaginable. And for her to come out of that experience, get to the other side and say, I can make a difference to work to ensure that this never happens again. I mean, we need to honor her legacy in our work and ensuring that some of these actions, these behaviors, these things that are part of that slippery slope toward as you said, catastrophic event in our country. I mean, we need to stop those from happening because it becomes this cascade. And I think there's a certain point at which it becomes very hard to step in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about the children being held in camps
mm-hmm.
right now
yeah.
that have come with their families seeking asylum, seeking even just the opportunity to apply for asylum, which is internationally recognized as a right of humans when they are facing violence in their country of origin, to be able to go somewhere and ask to be taken in. That right is not being honored right now. And there are still hundreds of children who've been separated from their families and may never see their parents again because their parents have been deported without the chance to apply for asylum, and the terrible record keeping and the terrible lack of resources in terms of being able to put those families back together, and really the terrible conditions. And when you hear about violence against these kids, violence against women in these camps, beyond harassment into assault, both of children and men and women, to me, that has very eerie overtones of things that we in prior years, I think, would have imagined. Those of us who were maybe more complacent about the immigration crisis or ignorant or apathetic would have said, oh, that could never happen here. Well, it is. And it is on us to do something about it. It's not to say in any way that all of the claims are legitimate, that everyone can stay. That may not be possible, but we have to give due process a chance and allow everyone the opportunity to express what's going on with them, and be given a fair hearing.
The one thing that I'll plug again from Gerda's episode, because it's easy to push away situations like that we hear about. It's easy to keep them at arm's length or think that they happen to other people or they would never happen to us, because it's psychologically difficult to really empathize and put yourself in that position, because you want to lose your mind thinking about somebody taking your kid from you. I, again, suggest you listen to Gerda's episode and pay particular attention to the part of the interview where she talks about being separated from her mom. And I interviewed her over a year ago, and I still can't, I can't get the image that she described out of my head. And that was the lens that I went into as I was hearing about what's happening at the border right now and how scared those kids must be. So I would highly suggest, if folks listening to this have the time, to listen to episode 19, particularly, again, the part where Gerda is separated from her mom. It's horrifying. I want to turn the corner a little bit into action. So we've mentioned now a bit about how we should be participating in our political system. Talk to me a little bit about how people can do that. Obviously, we have an election coming up. So for those who are on the fence about whether they should vote, you should vote. That's one thing you can do. But talk to me a little bit about what it looks like to be an active participant in the political system.
So what I've come to believe is that engagement in our community and in the political process is a part of life and not part of a lifestyle. That in order to be a citizen in a democracy, we can't be complacent. We can't figure that other people will do it for us. And I think that that's where a lot of us really missed out, frankly, on civic education as kids. And that's something that with Vote Like a Mother that I really want to do, is try to get that into school so that, and to make it fun and cool for kids, that this is something that's exciting to be a part of. You get to help determine what the direction is for your community, for your district, for your state at a national level, that you have the ability to have an impact. And that is something that I think a lot of us that grew up in comfortable circumstances were not taught. So that's a big thing for me. And so I think where is there action in that for individuals? It's talking to your kids. It's starting when they're young. It's reading them books that have to do with voting rights or how the government works, stories about important people. I mean, the picture books that have been written about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, about leaders in our society. That's a great place to start with kids. In terms of what grown-ups can do, there are so many different ways, and part of what Vote Like a Mother is trying to amplify the myriad opportunities to get involved, no matter your personality, whether you like talking to people or whether you like spending time by yourself, whether you have money to donate or whether you have time to donate, or whether you don't have much of either and say you have 5 minutes a day to give, how to maximize your impact and to make it accessible and make it into something like you can do it with friends or you can do it by yourself. There are so many different ways. So just a handful of things that I would say can have impact ahead of the midterms, which are happening November 6th. That's Tuesday, November 6th. In April, as you said, got to be participating in that election. Some states allow you to register right up until election day. So if you are not registered to vote, check and see whether the deadline has already passed in your state. You may still be able to register. And if you're already registered, make a plan to get to the polls. That's something that I'm told time and again makes a huge difference in turnout. Do people have a plan? They say, okay, I'm going to go and vote before work. I'm going to go on my lunch break. I'm going to go after I pick up the kids from school. I'm going to go in the evening. Make sure that you've got the coverage that you need. And if you need a ride to the polls, there are ways to get them. So you can reach out to the election commission board in your county. You can reach out to a campaign where you've found a like-minded candidate, and they will connect you with someone who can drive. The flip side, are you someone who has time and has wheels or the ability to take someone on the subway or on the bus? Be a volunteer and get other people to the polls. election voting in elections in this country is much harder than it should be. First of all, voter registration should be automatic when you turn 18. There should be check-ins through schools, through ID card and driver's license registrations. There should be check-ins at all sorts of different points where if you're not registered, the information is being pushed to you about how to get registered, or simply where your polling place is if you are registered. So that's also something that I'm hoping in the future we make moves toward. And some states like Oregon have made great strides toward in terms of automatic registration. But barring that, where are we today? We're in a place where it takes a lot of effort to get people to vote. And so those efforts of literally getting people to the polls, getting people registered, there are nonpartisan voter registration efforts happening all over the place. Groups like I Am a Voter, you can go to vote.org, literally it says vote.org, to register and to find out ways to help other people get registered. Once you've gotten past that registration and you know how you're going to vote, or you know how you're going to help people vote, commit some time to understanding whether you are in a community where, or a town or a city where you want to make change happen, and get involved not only in voting for things like school board and local budget votes. Try running. I mean, if you're someone who'd like to have an impact, those are relatively low commitment types of opportunities for you to have an outsized impact on what's happening in your immediate surroundings. After that, go from that to your town, your city level or county level. Get involved in a congressional campaign. Are you in a swing district? If you're in a swing district and there is a candidate who's running for office against an incumbent, and you feel like that candidate would do a better job and is more in line with your values, work to get the vote out for them. Increase their name recognition, volunteer with their campaign. If you don't want to knock on doors, if you don't want to phone bank from home and call potential voters, or text bank, lots of people are doing texting this year, volunteer to go pick up pizzas for the volunteers who are working in the office, or bake something and bring it by, or do an office supply run. Lots of different ways that you can get involved with those candidates. You can be a poll watcher. You can be someone who goes and gets paid to spend the day at a poll, making sure that everyone's vote is counted. There are a lot of voter disenfranchisement efforts happening right now, and it's a really a terrible thing. There are a lot of people whose votes are not going to be counted. There are efforts you can get involved with in terms of fighting that legislatively. If you're an attorney, you can sign on for efforts where cases are being brought to court to try to fight the voter disenfranchisement and enfranchisement on a legal level. But, if you are someone who simply has that day off, Tuesday, November 6th, or a future election date, just sign up to be a poll watcher and contribute at that level. So, there are so many different ways. If you go to votelikeamother.org, I've got some suggestions on my website of ways that you can get involved. It's under the heading Get Involved.
I love it. I love the work that you're doing. I love the way that you have connected it to, I mean, really the springboard and the foundation of it is something that is so universal to all of us. We talked about it at the very beginning of your interview, but the concept of being a mother, or having a mother, or knowing a mother is something that's so universal to all of us. And the ideas of respect and kindness and empathy and all of those amazing values that we talked about. I just love the foundation on which you're building this work. And I love that you have given so many ideas to people about how they can get involved beyond just the really obvious ones that we all might think about. So the work you're doing is amazing. The work you're doing is so important. And for folks who are listening to this, please, please, please do visit her website. Make sure that you're registered to vote in this next election and do what you can to help support the political process, because it does impact every single one of us in our daily lives, even if it's not something that you absolutely, notice day to day. It definitely does impact you. So I love the work that you're doing, and I'm just so appreciative of all the time and energy and passion that you're putting into it.
Thank you so much, April. I love what you do. You're contributing to the world so significantly, and I'm just honored that you wanted me to be a part of it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Before I let you go today, I have to ask you one more question, which is the last question that I ask everybody, and that is for your favorite motivational song, so I can add it to our Spotify Power playlist.
Absolutely. So one, I kind of have a whole album that re-entered my consciousness recently, which I think it was the 25th anniversary of this album by Liz Phair. It's called Exile in Guyville. And with what's happened recently and women speaking up about their assaults and harassment and the way they've had to alter the way they live their lives, some since childhood, as a result, this is an album that resonated with me at a crucial time in my teenagehood, and it's become a bit of a rallying cry for me as I spend late hours feeding information out and organizing people and trying to make a positive change in the world.
Amazing. Such a good contribution. So good. I'm so thrilled that we were able to make this work, that we were able to connect. Again, this is your episode's dropping right before the election, so it's very timely. I hope those who are listening are keeping this top of mind as you're planning out, as Sara said, how you're going to get to the polls on November 6th. And I hope this is encouraging all of you to go out there and vote like a mother. So thank you so much, Sara, for being here.
Thanks, April. Really appreciate it.
Regardless of your political leanings and regardless of what you think about any particular political topic or politician themselves, I really hope this episode made you think and made you think about the issues and the topics that are important to you. And even above and beyond that, I hope this episode gets you involved. Minimally, please go vote on November 6th. Every single one of us needs to have our voice in the process for it to work. And so please do what Sara said, get a plan together, make sure you're registered, and go vote in the midterm elections. It's really important. I want to highlight a few things, as always, before I close out today. Number one is sort of off topic, but more of a general theme that I tend to highlight. And you probably know where I'm going if you've listened to my episodes before. Sara, and my daughter's in the background again, so baby noises, as always. Sara talked about how she went to a march and she brought this sign that said, "Vote like a mother," and she had no idea that she had stumbled across something big. And when she realized that this could be something bigger and it could be a bigger movement, she just started. She didn't even know what it was yet. She just knew there was this thing, whatever that was going to turn out to be, called Vote Like a Mother, and she knew that she needed to secure her URL and get her social media handles. What she was going to do with them? No idea. But step one was to secure those spaces online so that she would have, the footprint that she needed to build whatever it is that came to mind when she reached step two. So what I'm going to urge you to do. Every single one of you has a goal, you have a project, you have a passion, you have something you want to try. Do it. Start today. Do one thing today. You absolutely don't have to have it figured out. I mentioned during this episode to go back and listen to Gerda's episode 19. Go back and listen to it, and listen to it for two reasons. I mean, number one, it's related to the topic that I'm talking about with Sara in this episode, and it kind of drives home some of the points that we're making. But number two, listen to how terribly produced that episode is. I'm almost embarrassed at how terribly produced it is, but I put it out there because the information was too important to not get into the world. But listen to how badly produced it is. That's me starting. That's me just doing this podcast, not knowing what the heck I'm doing. Today, thanks to Cameron, my producer, and thanks to a million other things that I've learned along the way, things sound a lot better and a lot more professionally put together. Hey, we're learning. That's awesome. But you don't have to have that in the beginning. Just start. Just start doing whatever it is that you're passionate about and figure it out along the way. Number 2, I mentioned it a little bit, but please, please, please get involved. Minimally, please go vote. I don't care what your political leanings are. Please go vote. We need your voice. We absolutely need everybody to be a part of this process. Even if you're like, quote, not a politics person and you don't really care about talking about it and watching it on the news and involving yourself in that in a day-to-day basis, go read up on the few people who are running in your area and go vote. It's one day out of your life. Just take the time and make sure that your voice is heard. Please get involved. And the last thing I want to highlight, we talked about this quite a bit during this episode, this notion of empathy and kindness and respect and compassion, and having those be the foundation and guiding values that you have in mind as you enter the political process. Now, as this episode is coming out, I'm going to lose it and start crying. I swear to God. Again, I've already cried in this episode. Jeez. I am on my last week of being at home with my daughter. Next week, she goes to daycare. And as you can tell, I'm really conflicted about this because on one hand, I'm so excited about the work that I have coming up, and I'm so passionate about the work that I'm doing. And I am thrilled to get back to having a little bit of balance and getting to work on some of the things that I have coming up. On the other hand, it devastates me to think about having to drop her off and have somebody else get to spend all that time with her. But the thing that I want you to think about is whatever situation you're in, I want you to flip it around and think about somebody else's situation. So for me, I had the privilege and the luxury of being able to be home with that wonderful little girl for 12 weeks. The reason why I got to do that is because I'm self-employed and I gave myself leave. The United States doesn't have maternity leave. 0. None. 0 weeks. Go look it up and inform yourself. 0. I gave myself a leave. And our family is in a financial situation that we could afford for me to make no money for 3 months. That's a really big deal, and that's a huge privilege. So many women don't have that option. They are faced with figuring out how to care for their kid days after they've delivered. I can't imagine that. We have to do better. That is criminal. Also, as bittersweet and slightly devastated as I am about dropping my daughter off at daycare, I'm dropping her off at one of the best daycares in our area. It's an incredible facility full of people who are going to love my daughter as much as I love her and who are as committed to turning her into the best human being they possibly can. I have 0 reservations about the people who will be taking care of her because I know she's going to be safe and cared for and taught so well, and she's going to have a great time while she's there. Flip that around. Imagine not having access to that. Imagine having to drop your child off at a place that you don't trust, where you don't feel comfortable. I can't imagine leaving part of my heart at a place that I didn't feel comfortable with. That is an incredible privilege that I have, to have a daycare option that is that safe and that wonderful. So I encourage you to do that as you're thinking about some of these issues that you feel strongly about, and even issues that you think you don't care about because they don't impact you. Sara said it beautifully. Don't think about what only impacts you or impacts the few. Think about what impacts us all, societally and on a broader basis. It is criminal to me that women don't have the support they need to do one of the biggest jobs and one of the most important jobs that you can possibly do, and that is help raise the next generation of people who are going to take over, this society when we're all done. All right, I've harped on this a lot. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It's really important. Please get out and vote on November 6th and share this episode with somebody who you think would benefit from it. Before we close out today, I want to say thank you to my producer, Cameron Hill, and to my incredible sponsor, Modern Well. If you want to learn more about how you can reach your goals in a one-of-a-kind work-life community, visit www.modernwell.co.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit from this inspiring message. And if you have a moment, click the link in the episode description to leave me a rating and a review on iTunes. It would mean so much to me. Finally, I want to remind you that it is absolutely possible to live a happy, fulfilling life, even in spite of all of the chaos and demands we all experience. Sign up at aprilseifert.com to gain access to tools that will help you do just that. I have carefully created and curated a set of tools that combine the powerful fields of psychology and design thinking to help you intentionally create a fulfilling, happy life you love. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and until next week, stay inspired.